All right, everybody. Hey, welcome to the live cast. All right. If you can hear me, just type in a yes. I'm sure if you can't hear me, you won't know to type in a yes. But I've had sound difficulties before, so I'm hoping that the sound's okay right now. Anyway, welcome to today. And I missed you guys last week, but let me tell you, I went to see that Georgia O'Keeffe exhibit that's here at the North Carolina Museum of Art, and oh my goodness, that was so inspirational. It's a really great exhibit. If you're in the area, around in the Raleigh area, then please, by all means, go check out this exhibit. It wasn't just George O'Keeffe. It was a lot of other artists as well that were inspired by George O'Keeffe, and it was just a really great exhibit. So anyway, go check it out. Anyway, so today I'm going to do some live weaving, but this time I'm going to do it on the circular looms, and the reason being is because I just went and picked up some of my clay looms from the studio. Excuse me. Usually from start to finish making these clay looms, it takes about a month. And that's mostly because of the firing schedule for the kiln. And I go to a community art center, so I'm kind of at the mercy of when they can get things in the kiln and out of the kiln, and we're approaching the holiday season, so it takes a little longer. But anyway, I wanted to show you some of these. And it's all kind of similar to, and I know I've showed you this piece, which I still haven't figured out what I'm going to do here. I got to play with that. Anyway, so I have this piece, and I was really thrilled with how this piece came out. So I went back to the studio, and I made some more. I made this little piece, which is the same glaze and clay body as this big piece. I also made this piece, which is it's a black clay, and I wrote down what the glaze is. I want to say that this is a chino. I was messing around with some chinos, and this has a big crack in it though, and that's the problem with some of these flat pieces, is that they get these big cracks. But you know what? I think I'm okay with that. I mean, I don't know. I think I'm just okay with it because, you know, the way that it's just rusticy edges, and these holes are for me to put in hangers, and I usually do a hanger with just some wire across the top. And I also have this piece, and again, I'm not really sure what this glaze is, but it is on a black clay, and I have the notes somewhere. I write down or take pictures of my glazes. I also started messing around with some smaller tiles. This one, I did a bunch of these tiles, and the thing is that you can see I have the holes in the corners, and I'm going to attach them, you know, together to make like almost something that's going to mimic a quilt or a granny square Afghan. And I'm trying a different glaze and clay body. This, I'm not sure I love the contrast of the white with the black here, but I'm not sure I am crazy about this as well. But I want, especially for these quilt pieces where there's going to be a bunch of weaving right next to each other, I don't want the glaze to be more interesting than the actual weaving. And then I'm trying out a bigger size. I kind of like this size. And this size, if I've got a bunch of squares together, I think this size is going to work great. And then, just for giggles, to not waste clay, this was the center part of this. Actually, look at that. Look at that together. That might be kind of cool. I don't know. I'll have to mess with it. But I just went ahead and cut out this little piece as well. So I'm going to warp one of these up and show you how I do the circular weaving. Now, this, there's a lot of similarities to weaving something like this and weaving with a hula hoop, or, you know, a big, I've seen where people are using embroidery hoops to do the same type of thing. And And there was discussion as well, and even some examples. Somebody had done this with air dry clay as opposed, or was it air dry, or maybe it was paper clay. I can't remember. It was something that you can get easily at Michael's, and you don't have to have a kiln for. You could do polymer clay, although that would take a lot of polymer clay and it might get expensive. Or you could, you could do all kinds of things. There's also, I know the, what is the Fibery Goodness? I think it is group. They have some circular looms that are wood that have the notches out of the top. And I've seen, and I'll put a link below, I know that Melissa at Wild Hair also has some of those looms, and she has them where she's using the round weaving as the top of like a tam, which is amazing. There's so much you could do with that. You could take that round weaving and, crochet your hat body down from the bottom. Anyway, I'll put links in the show notes to those things. But if you're in the Fiber Art Collective, within the last month, I believe it was, somebody had done the same thing using paper clay or air dry clay, and it came out just amazing. I mean, if you're just going to hang it on the wall, it doesn't have to be ceramic. It doesn't have to be that sturdy. I mean, you could use pieces of wood, cut out a circle, drill some holes, and you're done. Okay, so I am going to warp one of these up. I'm going to switch the camera first and get started. So anyway, hi Lynn from the UK. If you guys want to give a shout out where you're from, I'd love to hear about that. Anyway, but welcome. Thanks for joining me live. All right, I'm going to switch the camera. If I can remember. There we go. Yay! All right, so you can see I've got all my stuff here. I'm going to move some of this out of the way, and I think, let's see, which one? I think I might try this one. I love this one. This is my favorite. I think because I really like the glaze on these pieces. Anyway, let me get some of these out of the way. I am going to kind of limit myself as far as yarn goes to, I've got this leftover linen and cotton yarn that I've been using on some dish towels. What I've used in the past is just regular dishcloth cotton that you can get at Michael's, which is like worsted weight. This is much thinner. And I'm also using, there's not a whole lot of needles that'll go through these smaller holes I've been making. But this is a Susan Bates weaving needle that you can get at Michael's that fits in my chibis, which you can get anywhere. You can get Knitting Notions, these little tapestry needles. These two will fit. Everything else, I think, for warping is not going to work. Anyway, so I'm going to, and for these, I made sure to do an odd number of holes. It's counterintuitive. For whatever reason, odd number of holes makes the weaving work out. I mean, to me, if I think about it too much, I would think that it would not be that. I would think it would be the even number, but for whatever reason, it's not. All right. So I am going to thread this needle with this thinner yarn. All right. And I am going to, okay, so I'm just going to randomly start somewhere. And what I do is you know what, let me get a bunch of this off of here. Okay. I'm going to leave that down there. I'm going to tie that off later. Okay. And I just go across. And instead of going back, you see I want the warp threads to be on this outside here. So I'm going to loop back here. Oh, you know what? I want to go here. Yeah. All right. And I'm going to go across. And you see how I'm just kind of going back and forth. Oops. Nope, that's not what I wanted to do. I want to go, oh, this is going to be a hot mess, I can tell. Here. Oh, there's a tangle. Yeah, that's the problem with using such a big, long string to begin with, is that, boy, is it going to get tangled. All right, so you can see I'm going across here, making the stitches here, so all the threads are on the front. All right, and then go back across. Did I lose my string? Oh my goodness. All right. Go back up through here. Go across. Alright, so what I'm also going to do is I'm going to limit myself. I have a bag of yarn that I used for my last kind of free-formy kind of weaving. And I'm just going to limit myself to what I've got in that bag. And there's, I'll show you the bag. This bag here. This is my, let's see if I can show you right here. My traveling bag of tricks. Let me get this out of here. But this is, I've got bags of just remnant little pieces and whatever fits in. And this. Not that that's all of my yarn, trust me. I've got plenty more, but just to kind of keep it to where it's a little more portable and to kind of limit myself to not digging out all of the yarn at this point. All right. Mm-hmm. Alright, almost done. Oops. Alright, so this last piece right here, see that's, I just have one hole left here. Everything else is strung up. I'm going to take this and bring it towards the middle. And I tell you what, this piece right here though, I'm going to knot it right there to this side right here, because this is where I started doing that warp. And I want to secure it. I'm just going to knot it right to this next piece here. I'll just kind of sew a little bit of knot, and I'm gonna cut it kind of short, but I might go back and cut it a little more. All right, so I've got this last string here, right? So I'm going to go in and I'm going to kind of shore up the center part here. I usually kind of just bring those strings together and sew a little bit this way, and then I'm going to sew a little bit this way. Oop. All right. So from here, okay, you see, so now I've got my warp ready to go. So from here, will you just use your own art yarn? You know, that's a good question. I'm going to use whatever's in this bag, and a lot of it is like this. For the most part, is a lot. I mean, here's some of my own hand spun. This is a commercial yarn. This is hand spun. I've got some sari ribbon. So it's going to be a mix. It's going to be a mix of some of my yarn and some of just kind of whatever I have going on. Whatever I have in this bag. And I want to say, you know what? This bag was what I used for this piece. It's whatever was in that bag I used here. All right, so you see how I have, I mean, this is the warp for this here. So I'm going to do the same thing. I kind of like having that white center because it kind of, it repeats what's going on here, the colors, you know, it kind of anchors this whole weaving. So I'm going to do a similar thing here and start out my weaving with what I've got on this needle here. So I'm just going to pick an area, and it doesn't matter, you know what, I'm going to do this one more time here. It doesn't matter if I start where I started the warp or not. I just need to pick an area and start going around. So I'm just going to, and you just go over and under, over and under. And that's why I like these long needles, especially even if it's in this just smallish area that was under. So I'm going over, over, and you just sew it. See, and as I work on that, that's going to kind of even out that warp throughout this right here. All right. So. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm really, you know, in that one that I've already made, it started out as a practice piece. And I just started randomly weaving, and I really liked the way it came out. So I went to the studio and just started making a bunch more of those looms. And I tell you too, the photographs don't do the colors justice because some of those colors are really subtle and they're not reading in the photography. All right. So I don't know if you guys can see. I'm just, like I said, just weaving a small little area with this warp yarn. And this warp yarn is so thin, but at the same time I think it's kind of appropriate for this smaller piece. So, but this is, I'm doing some dish towels out of this linen cotton, and I love the way those are turning out. They're really, we'll see what happens. I mean, I know that that fabric totally changes once you once you wash it and kind of take it off the loom, and it has its little shrinkage happening. All right, you can see, I don't know if you guys can see how it's kind of totally starting to take form, and it's evened out that warp a little bit. So I'm just going to do a few more rows like this and move on to some color. And I'm going to try and complement this kind of rosy color glaze that I've got going on here, but like I said, I don't want that glaze. I've never wanted the glaze to like overpower the actual weaving. I just want it to be complementary to it. And I guess the same would hold true. I mean, if you're doing, if you're doing like some air dried clay or even some wood that, you know, you want something that's going to complement your weaving and not really overpower what you're weaving. Oh, am I going right? This is up, over, under, over, under, over, under. It's so hard to see when it's this small. All right, that's getting close. All right, so I'm going to let me do a little more. I keep saying I'm going to stop, and then I want to keep going. So I'm going to do something that's going to pop that color just a little bit, and I'm going to cut this. You know what, I'm going to see if I can, it's so thin. I really need my glasses too. I can't see a darn thing. All right, I'm just going to tuck it in the back for now and leave me a tail long enough to weave in, because right now this needle's too fat and I won't be able to weave that in. All right, so I'm going to leave me enough to weave in for later. Okay. All right. I'm gonna pick some colors. Let me just grab a bag. All right. Oh, this is some good chunky-ish stuff. And then I've also got, oh, you know what? Maybe I'll start with one of these. This is, I've showed you guys these. These were the loom waste off of that piece that I did recently. What do I have? Oh, I started to make a yarn. Let's see. I'm going to take this green. I'm going to weave a little piece of this green in there. Oop. Excuse me. Okay, let's see. I think I need my glasses. Do I have glasses here? Oh, I've got these little glasses. I'll clean them up a minute. I haven't used these in a while. Grandma's getting old. I can't see. All right. Ugh. Okay. So I'm making sure that I'm going over and under as I should in this area. Yeah, I like that green against this right here. All right, and I'm going to tuck this little piece back in, and that also is going to get woven in. Actually, I might be able to. There we go. And I guess, you know, having these ends super tight isn't going to matter as much, because this, you know, this piece is basically going to sit on a wall, and it's not going to get moved a lot to where those ends are going to come loose or anything. Oh, why is that so loose? Okay, there we go. I don't know if you guys can see. Let's see. Yep. Just a little bit of green. Do a few rounds of this, even though I don't know that I want a huge green section, but a little bit of a green section is nice. Excuse me. Ugh. Got some sinusy stuff going on. I feel like I'm constantly clearing my throat and my voice is becoming deeper. Oh, please do not let me be getting sick. It's that time of year. All right. Oh, look at that. Yeah, I'm liking the way that's, you know, I'm liking the way this kind of small yarn is working on this little area. I think, you know, especially for these smaller pieces, that the subtle small pieces. Now also too, I'm trying to pull it to where a lot of, and I'll show you, hold on, the warp threads, when I tighten it up a little bit, you can see how, focus, how the warp threads are kind of are getting hidden, which is kind of what I want for the colored areas, is to not really show off that white warp thread, even though I like the white, but I like it as an accent. All right, do a few more rounds. Oh, you know what? I'm going to move to the smaller needle, because that big one, I think I'm pulling that thread out too much. All right. Actually, I'm going to move to a fatter. I've got, this came with this flat with a little curved tip. That came with a set of weaving needles that I got, like at Seymour or something. Oh, my husband's home. Jerry, hush. Jerry. Wait, let me let him out. Hold on. Jerry. Come on. Right now. Go. Go. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Bruce is home. Yeah. Anyway. All right. So. All right, back to this. Yeah, that works much better. Especially, I like the little curved tip too, because that kind of helps get around some of these threads as I'm going around. And working with a shorter needle in the small circumference works much better. Okay. Alright, what I think I'm also going to do, now look, it's interesting because this is a thick and thin yarn, so it's not an even circle all the way around. It's a little off, which I'm not hating that. All right. You know, and you can also, so it's thinner over here and it's thicker over there. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to go, and then I'm going to go back across. Like that. And then go back one more time, and that kind of fills in, and you see right here where there's a little, I don't know if you can see that. Let's see. You see where there's a little jog right here? Okay, so I'm going to go past that when I go over it. Let's see. Oh. Get that back on the needle. Okay, so I'm going to go past that when I go back across. And then that will smooth out that little jog right there. It's kind of like when you're doing when you're knitting socks, how you go into the row below to kind of soften up that. Okay, you see how that kind of softened up that area right there. All right, made it smoothed out that little stair step, but I'm gonna have to do it again over here too. All right, Okay. There, that kind of smoothed out that piece right there too. All the way around. Alright, I'm going to put that to the back and I'll weave that in later. Alright. Let's see what color's next. You know, I think I'm going to go with, look at this. Look at this one. See how it has that, can you see? See how it has that little bit of pink in there? That's going to look good with this. Of course, it's short as heck. But I'm wondering... Alright, we'll just weave it in and see where we get, how far we get. And there's a couple of pieces like that. There's this piece. Okay, let's see. And then there's this piece. Let's see these two together. You can see these. See, both of those have a little bit of that pink in there. And I've got a, ooh, look at this one, has that pink in there too. That's short though. Alright, and then I've got a ton of this brown, which I really like too. Okay, I'm going to set these aside. I'm going to use this blue against this green right here, because that's going to be pretty. Put that to the back. Under, over. Yeah, I like this. And then that way too, this blue, and that's going to introduce that turquoise into there. You see, I don't know if you can see that. Focus. No? Yes? No? Let's see if I can get it to focus. Maybe it won't. I wonder if it's... Let me try putting this behind it. Oops. There we go. That's a little better. Yes. Alright, so you see that blue's kind of contrasting just a little bit on here. So I kind of like that, and that's going to introduce that blue into these colors, which I think is going to be nice. Over. Okay. And see if hopefully I can get at least a couple of rounds on that with this, because it's such a short. But you know what? That's what I love about weaving, is that sometimes, I mean, you really don't use as much yarn as you're using with knitting, and so you can really use all those little scrappy little ends. That's why I save all those, especially with the hand spun. I save all these scrappy little ends so I can reuse it in the art weaving. Okay, yeah, I'm really liking that. Let's see. Yeah, I'm really liking how that blue contrasts in there. Alright. I'm gonna finish out this one little piece. And I think I might go ahead and do that lighter piece in as well. And then move to a little bit of texture. Okay, so I don't like to put anything super wildly textural right close to the center, because that center I'm weaving so tiny. So I usually save some thinner stuff towards that center. Okay, but once I get about this far out, then it's not too bad. But I'm going to do this little green and pink, so that's going to bring that green back in. Where I'm going to just go where I left off here, which is right here. So I'm going to start it right here. I probably could do this just as easy without the needle. Maybe easier, but I'm going to put that needle back on and put my glasses on because, boy, I'm having a hard time seeing this. Let me try this. Go. Oop. I want to go under and over. Right. Here we go. Question. Somebody says, where did you get your tiles? I made these tiles. I have access to a clay studio here in Cary, North Carolina. And it's part of their Parks and Recreation. But I was saying before, Catherine, that I have there's somebody in our Fiber Art Collective on Facebook that used an air dry clay or a paper clay, and then she went back and painted it, and it came out amazing. It was lovely, just lovely. And especially if you're doing something that's gonna hang on the wall, I really think you could get away with not doing ceramic and doing a material that otherwise, you wouldn't use it for like housewares or anything like that. But for something on the wall, you could totally do something like that. Or even a piece of wood, like a piece of plywood with some holes drilled in it, would totally work. You could do some crazy stuff with painting on that, or even go back and paper mache some texture. But yeah, anything really would work, honestly. But yeah, the air dry clay, if you don't have access to a ceramics, which I didn't until I moved here, and I think I'm really lucky that I have something here. All right. Yeah, and as a matter of fact, I want to say that this is like a Montessori craft, where you make for students, they make tiles like this and then weave some stuff. I'm just taking it and using my hand spun. All right, so look at that. I love the way that's looking, if you can see. Yeah, you see that subtle little purple is kind of reading in that. Okay, so now I think it's time for something a little chunkier. You're quite welcome, Catherine. All right, let's see. Look at this. I've got some dreads in here, and that I'm gonna look, because the dreads could be a little thick for this, but I'll never know until I try. All right, so I don't know if I want to introduce another color. This is a yellow. If I want to go pull this purple in, maybe, or this green. This green is actually kind of interesting. It could be that green. Let's see what else I got. Oh, look at this one. This is kind of cool. This is a thick and thin green that has some beads on it. And I also have, no, wait a minute. This isn't a dread, but this is actually a piece of art yarn. Okay, I might have to do that. Excuse me. Yeah, you see now there's this little area right here, and it's going to bring out that blue a little bit, and then this is kind of like there's a little brown in there that kind of almost feels like that this color of the glaze. So I might let's see, maybe this area here with a little bit of blue. Nope. Ooh, this area right here, but that's not a lot of blue right there. You see, I kind of want the blue in there. Maybe it's this area, and then there's a lot of texture right there. Okay, yeah, it's going to be this area. So let me just cut it off here. Now this, oh, see, now this is a hot mess, but I think it's going to be okay because it's, I mean, it's on the back. Alright, I definitely want this here, but do I want, where do I want to position? I'm trying to decide where to position this little bit of fluff. So I either want to position it, you know, I think I want to position it down below. So I'm going to make it go over this warp thread down here, so I can strategically position that little bit of fluff right there. Okay, so let's see how the rest of it pans out. Very subtle, yeah, right? I mean, I'm just trying to play with just a little bit of you know, the colors, and trying to introduce that blue, but still you know, still kind of give a nod to the green and definitely the glaze color. I'm just hand weaving this little bit right in here. You know, and to lock it in, I'm going to go around one more time as far as I can go. Got me all the way around. Okay, now look at this. I like this little doot right here too, so I'm gonna pull that to make sure that sticks out. Let me see if I can show you that. Yeah, you see this right here? I'm kind of liking that, so I'm gonna make sure that stands out too. Alright, so now since I did this big old chunky texture thing, I'm gonna push it down through here. I'm going to want to go back behind it with something a little more smooth. Alright, let me cut some of this stuff away. Alright, and to lock it in place. So let's go with, I don't know if I like that. This is interesting. See, now this, no, you know what? I think I want, maybe. I'm going to set this aside. I might use that, but I'm going to look and see what else I got going on. Okay, let's see. Oh, what about that? Oh, no. See, now I've got this white hand spun. Do I want to go back to white? I think that's too light. I think I want darker. So I'm going to go with, here we go. No, that's too dark. Or, you know, I'm kind of digging this yellow. Look at that. I might do that. Dark blue. I don't know if I have a dark blue. Let's see. Dark blue, dark blue. I've got this little piece of leather. That could be interesting. How about, oh wait, what's this? No, not that. diving deep into this bag. Okay, let's see. You know what? I might go with this. I might go with this. This is kind of a purplish brown that I hand dyed. And just do a couple of rows of that. Because I think that might make that light blue pop out just a hair. Alright, let's do that. On my table. Oh, this right here? This is, oh, these are thrums. I might go back to that. I'm going to do this. And actually, that blue, or are you talking here? Wait, I'm trying to see. We're dark blue. I'm looking at them online. I think that you're talking about these thrums. Okay, so I think I'm going to do that, but I'm going to do a round of this because this contrasted with that's going to be amazing. Okay, let's see. Under, over. Let me cut this. I'm only going to use a little bit of this. Yeah, and then that actually, and this kind of matches with what this tile is a little bit. It's really, really, really subtle. Okay. I'm trying to keep this in focus because you know what? This is kind of centered. There we go. And I've got that square in the corner where you can see my face. And it's kind of getting in the way. I'm trying not to let that get in the way. All right. Yeah, that's, and then this way too, I can kind of, all right, you see how when I do this, it kind of tightens all that up. So I'm going to do that to where it'll kind of beat all those yarns into place a little bit. All right. Yeah, I'm liking the texture on that a lot. Okay. Yeah, okay, you can see, let me hold this up, and you can see when I see how it kind of pulls all those pieces in, but then that pops that texture out a good bit. So I'm really liking with that. All right, I'm going to do a few rounds of this, also to kind of give myself a little bit of plain field right there. And this is has just the slightest variegation in it. It was kettle dyed, so it's a semi-solid, which will add a little interest to the fabric too. All right. Okay, so yeah, so you know, if you were doing this like on a hula hoop, it'd be the same theory, just bigger, and you would be wrapping, you know, as you're wrapping over the bar. I would try and you know, keep bringing the warp threads towards the front, because I think when you're wrapping it on a hula hoop, some of them will go to the back naturally, but you know, keep wrapping it and trying to bring those warp threads to the front, because here it's easy to get all those warp threads on the front, but you'll have to try that a little harder on a hula hoop, or even on, well, I think on the circular frames it's similar. You would be able to warp around the pegs to where the warp is to the front, and then you would take it off that loom. Oh yeah, you see how that adds a little depth, you know, as this yarn's a little smoother, so it pops out that texture just a little bit. All right. Let me do a couple, another round or two, just to keep keeping on with that smoother texture, so it'll contrast. Whoop. Already I made such a mess on my table. It's easy to do when you start digging through your yarns and it starts getting piled up when you're doing this kind of freeform weaving. Okay. All right. I'm going to end it, I think, towards the bottom. Right here. Now this actually is wide enough where I'm going to weave this end in, so you can see. Get my book so you can focus. So I'm going to take this and kind of weave it back through this fabric right here to tuck that end in, kind of like you would if you were, you know, weaving in an end in knitting. It'll be a little easier to do. So I'm just going to take it and go through these little, see right here, and just kind of pull that end through, and that'll secure that. All right. And again, I'm not terribly worried about it because this is not a hard wearing garment, it's just something that's going to hang on the wall. So chances are it's not going to get unraveled. Okay. Oh, I'm liking that. Oh yes. Okay, so yes, I do believe some blue would be awesome right here. That dark blue against that. Oh yes. And I think what I might do I want to leave some ends? I might leave some ends out underneath. Yeah, let me see how that looks. I think what I want to do is leave these ends out here, but I might not, because I think underneath that little gradu right there, that's going to look pretty cool. Okay. What time are we at? Oh, we're getting to be right at an hour. I'm going to cut this off at an hour. How would you keep the warp threads in place if you were using a grapevine wrapped in a circle? Huh. That's a good question. You know, I would... Two things. You could either like take a rasp and kind of saw a little groove in the top of your grapevine, and I guess if you're using the grapevine, you wouldn't be taking it off, you would want to keep it on there. Either that, or when you wrap it around, instead of just wrapping up and over and back down through, I would wrap it around like twice before you come back down, and that's going to kind of secure it a little bit to that top of that grapevine. That's what I would do. Either that or find a way to notch. But I'd be afraid if I started sawing on that grapevine in notches that it would weaken the frame. So I would be tempted to say, do that wrap it around a couple of times first. You know, I don't think I want to leave those hanging down. I'm going to go ahead and tuck those in. So let me... Whoop. Yeah, I think that's going to be too much. Oh, that's going to look good though, because it has a little bit of that purple, and it's got that dark blue. It's bringing that, you see now, it's kind of pulling See how it's making that blue on the outside of the green pop a little bit more? That's a good one. Okay. I think I might have to go another round with another one similar to that. Let's see, what do we got? This piece? Yeah, that piece. Maybe. This piece. Oh yes, this piece. Alright. Do I want to leave them? I'm trying to decide if I want to leave that little fuzz out, and I don't think I do. I want to tuck it in. I will start here. Okay. Now I want to show you guys something. You can see, you know, I've been working on this, and because these tiles are not perfect, which is part of what I like about them. Okay, you can see as I'm building this, it's, you know, a lot of my weaving is kind of to this side, and there's extra space around here. So what I would probably do is, and this might be a good place to do this, is take an extra texture and put it around on this side to kind of even up that circle, and that might be in the form of probably, let's do a piece of sari silk. I'm tempted to go with this gold. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go keep it kind of monochromatic and do this. No. How about this color? Yeah, you know what? I'm going to go with the wine color. So I'm just going to cut a piece of the sari ribbon, and again, I'm only going to do it to kind of fill in some space right here because I'm kind of close to my frame here. So I'm going to go just right through here up top, and that's going to kind of be in counter, you know, a design element that's compositionally opposite of this little piece right here. So I'm going to fill in up there. Let me see if I can get right there. Ooh, that's bright. Alright, let's see. So I'm going to go, and I want this to stick out actually. So let me put it there. Thank you. It probably wouldn't take much rasping to make a notch that would keep it, especially if it was a hefty vine. Yeah, I agree. I guess you would just kind of have to play it by ear, Karen. I would think that if, I mean, a part of me kind of thinks that I don't know. It just would depend, and especially if you're bending grapevine, and especially if to bend it, either it has to be green or you have to wet it. And this is me trying to remember how to make grapevine wreaths from the 80s. I think my mom did this. But I think for anything like that, you had to kind of soak it. So if, you know, you're making it pliable and rasping it while it was wet or green, then I would think that it would be more firm. You wouldn't be, you know, putting pressure into like a really brittle part of that vine. I would think. I could be wrong, but yeah, let me know how that turns out. How that works. If rasping just a little bit, a little notch in there did the trick. Because I'd be interested to know. Alright, so one of the things I could do here is if I wanted it to be, and this is pretty textural I think, but I think if when I start to wrap, you know what, I'm going to do one more section. I'm going to go back over this way. Is what I want to do. And then I'm going to do another round of smooth to seal this in, and boy, these little threads of the sari silk is making me nuts. Okay. So I'm gonna, yeah, and you see I can kind of push that down to be closer, but you see how it's kind of evening up the area. It's evening up to make this area a little more, the space is a little more even. All right. I will experiment. Great. Yeah, experiment. You know, sometimes experimenting really shakes out some really cool stuff. Okay. So I'm going to end this piece right here. That little bit of... Okay. Yay. Alright, so then what I'm going to do is... And I'm going to leave that kind of out. But you know what? That's not where I want it to be. I want it to be actually right here, honestly. Yeah, maybe here. Yeah, that's better. Alright, because I don't want it to be over... Oh, this stupid sari thread. Okay. You see, I don't want it to be over here so much. I want it to be more like opposite of where that is. So I'm going to let that be right there. And you know what? I'm going to knot it since it kind of did this little twining thing. Okay. I don't hate that. I don't know. I might change that. I might hate it. I don't know. Alright, so then I'm going to go back and do another round of smooth yarn to just kind of tuck that in. Alright, I'm going to keep going, but I tell you what, we're right at an hour. So I'm going to sign off. Let me change this up. Just me. So I'm going to sign off and keep on working on this, and I'll post pictures on Instagram or in the Fiber Art Collective or both. So there you have it. So that's round weaving. That's what I'm working on here, and I've got all these others to test out, and this is going to be a new body of work, this kind of round weaving on these tiles. So anyway, thanks for joining me, and I will catch you guys next week. If there's anything you want to see demoed, then by all means, please do. Give me a comment and let me know what you would like to see, and I will put it in the rotation. Anyway, also I'm putting a link down below if a link for a buy me a coffee. So if you find a lot of these videos helpful, or if it inspires you in any way, and if you want to support what I'm doing, then buy me a cup of coffee. So I'll put that link down below as well. So have a good week, and I will see you guys next week. Let me know if you want to see anything demoed. But thanks for joining me. Talk to you later. Bye.